Welcome, beautiful soul. I'm grateful you're here tonight, because this story carries the kind of strength that grows in silence and rises when the world anticipates it least. Tonight you'll follow a woman who didn't just protect her sister's memory. She honored it with dignity, intelligence, and a heart that refused to break. This is the journey of Serena, a Black woman who turned grief into clarity and walked through a world of power without ever losing her grace. Settle in with me for a moment and let your spirit rest, because this story isn't just about loss or betrayal. It's about restoration, healing, and the quiet justice that comes when truth finds its way home.
The night she walked into that private boardroom, no one knew her name. They only noticed the woman in the fitted black suit, moving with the kind of confidence you can't fake. The billionaire at the head of the table looked her over as if she were a problem he could solve with charm or money. He didn't recognize her. He didn't know that the woman standing in front of him was connected to the biggest mistake of his life. He didn't know that 7 years earlier he walked out on a woman who carried his child while he stole her business idea and turned it into an empire. Tonight he thought he was interviewing a new consultant. He had no idea she came for something he couldn't buy back. She came with silence. She came with strategy. And she came to reclaim everything her sister lost. The elevator doors opened into the polished hallway that led to Braxton Hale's executive floor. Serena stepped out with slow, steady confidence, her heels tapping lightly against the marble as the receptionist tried not to stare at her. She carried herself like someone who understood the weight of a room before entering it. She adjusted the sleeve of her suit and took a breath that settled her spirit. She wasn't here to fight. She wasn't here to demand anything. She was here to finish a circle her sister never got the chance to close. When the assistant walked her toward the glass meeting room, Serena kept her gaze steady. Inside, Braxton Hale sat at the head of the table, reviewing documents he didn't really understand because the algorithms behind his empire were never his work. They belonged to her sister. Serena watched him for a moment before stepping inside. He lifted his head, sliding into a smooth smile he used on any woman he wanted to impress. He didn't stand up. He didn't offer respect. He only leaned back, studying her with slow interest. He didn't recognize the shape of her face or the familiar tilt of her eyes, the small details that matched the woman he betrayed years ago. He didn't know he was staring at the sister of the woman who once cried on a hospital bed, holding her stomach while he walked out with everything she built. Serena pulled out a chair and sat down without waiting for permission. Her calm expression unsettled him more than any anger could have. She placed her folder on the table while he watched her like a man evaluating a threat he couldn't name. She didn't blink. She didn't rush. She let the silence sit between them like a witness. Tonight was the first night he would learn that money never wins against truth. Serena sat steady while Braxton skimmed through her portfolio, unaware that she designed every page to make him underestimate her. She already knew his rhythm. She watched dozens of his interviews and learned the way he softened his tone when he wanted someone to trust him. She understood the exact moment he slipped into charm, the casual lean he used to make the other person feel chosen, the confident smile he practiced for cameras and boardrooms. He was predictable in ways he didn't realize. Tonight he used all those tricks on her without knowing she had come prepared for every one of them. He complimented her professionalism first. Then he praised the clarity of her proposals. Then he shifted toward her appearance in the same smooth tone he once used on her sister. Serena didn't react. She gave him nothing, only a quiet confidence that made him talk faster than he planned. When he finally handed her the contract, she saw it immediately. The structure was almost identical to the one that robbed her sister years ago. The vague ownership clauses. The hidden rights. The warm language that looked harmless until you understood what it really meant. Serena read every line carefully as he talked about global expansion and upcoming mergers, pretending he built everything from scratch. She asked him why he wanted to bring her in, and his answer told her more about him than the contract ever could. He spoke about her confidence. He mentioned the way she walked into the room. He said he liked the way she handled herself. His attention drifted toward her in a way that told her he wasn't thinking about real partnership or respect. He saw her as someone he could influence, someone he could impress, someone he could guide into the same trap he once set for her sister. Serena kept her expression calm and steady as he continued to flatter her. When she closed the folder and stood up, he looked pleased, convinced he already had her interest. She shook his hand and felt the same coldness she remembered from the day he walked away from her sister. But she said nothing. She didn't need to confront him. She didn't need anger or warnings. She already had enough information to begin taking back what never belonged to him in the first place. As she stepped out of the room and walked toward the elevator, she felt a quiet certainty settle inside her. This wasn't revenge, it was clarity. It was the beginning of a journey that her sister never got the chance to finish, and Serena planned to finish it with intelligence, strategy, and a level of calm he would never expect. Serena didn't leave the building with haste or tension. She walked out with the quiet patience of someone who understood that timing could be more powerful than confrontation. The city buzzed beneath the tall glass tower as she stepped onto the sidewalk, blending into the evening rush of people heading home from work. Cars honked. A man laughed loudly into his phone. A couple argued near the corner about dinner plans. Life moved on in a rhythm that didn't care who held the most money or who pretended to control everything. Serena felt the weight of her next steps settling into place as she headed toward the parking garage. Nothing about her plan needed to be loud. It only needed to be accurate. She unlocked her car and sat for a moment with her hands rested on the steering wheel. Her sister's photo hung from a small clip on the dashboard. Not a posed picture, just a casual captured moment from years ago when life still felt steady. Her sister, Mariah, smiled with the kind of softness that made people trust her instantly. Serena touched the corner of the photo gently, then placed her hand back. She didn't let herself remember the days that followed the betrayal. She didn't let the memories pull her backward. Tonight wasn't about pain. Tonight was about movement. She drove across the city to a quiet neighborhood where an old friend, Cassandra Mills, ran a consultancy firm that specialized in corporate transitions. Cassandra once worked directly under Braxton during his early years, before he turned into the polished version of himself that the media worshipped. She was one of the few who knew the truth behind his rise. She was also one of the few people who believed Mariah when she cried in her small apartment, pregnant and terrified, holding a contract that drained her ownership from the very system she built. When Serena arrived at Cassandra's office, she found her typing late into the night. Cassandra looked up from her computer, her eyebrows lifting at the sight of Serena's expression. There was a stillness in Serena's face that made Cassandra rise without asking questions. She locked the door and guided Serena toward the leather couch, where the dim yellow lamp cast a warm glow over the room. "You saw him," Cassandra said quietly. Serena nodded, resting her purse beside her. "He hasn't changed. He thinks he has, but the core is the same." Cassandra sat across from her and waited. Serena didn't rush. She explained everything in one long, steady flow. The meeting, the contract, the compliments disguised as opportunity, the familiar trap inside the paperwork. Cassandra listened with a measured calm, occasionally nodding as Serena spoke. When Serena finished, Cassandra leaned back and took a slow breath. "If you want this to work," Cassandra said, "you can't compete with him the way he competes with others. He uses charm and power, you use precision. You win by taking control without him realizing you did." "I know," Serena said. "That's why I'm here." Cassandra stood and walked to a tall cabinet filled with labeled binders. She pulled out a thick black folder and placed it on the table. Serena recognized the handwriting on the side, original analytics patent draft. It belonged to her sister. Serena felt a small shift in her chest. She hadn't seen those drafts in years. Cassandra placed her hand on the folder gently as though touching it required a certain permission. "Your sister was brilliant," Cassandra said. "He knows it. Deep down, he knows he didn't build that empire. He only executed the growth. The brain behind it wasn't his, it was hers." Serena nodded. "And he used her heart to get it." Cassandra closed the folder. "So you'll take it back, but not through courts or threats. You'll do it the same way he did it, strategically, quietly, legally, and with enough grace that he will never see the trap closing." One by one, Cassandra pulled out files that contained the list of clients who had always been skeptical of Braxton's leadership. Some had only stayed because the system Mariah built was too efficient to replace. Some had complained privately about Braxton's lack of transparency. Some were tired of his ego. Cassandra placed each folder in front of Serena as though arranging cards in a slow, careful game. "These clients are your first targets," Cassandra said. "They're fair, intelligent, and frustrated. If you give them stability and offer them results, they'll follow you." Serena studied every name, every company, every reason behind their discontent. She understood that this was more than business. This was strategy, this was chess, and she had been preparing for this game for 7 silent years. She left Cassandra's office late into the night, her mind clear and her plan sharper than before. As she stepped outside, the air had cooled. The city lights flickered softly through the mist. Serena inhaled deeply, letting her lungs fill with calm determination. She didn't want to destroy Braxton. She didn't want to make him suffer. She only wanted to restore what was stolen, not just for her sister but for herself. By morning, Serena sent out her first wave of proposals to the initial list of clients. The emails were clean, respectful, and thorough. Each one highlighted her expertise without overselling it. Each one presented her as a stabilizing option in an industry full of noise. She didn't mention Braxton. She didn't criticize his leadership. She simply showed a better option. Within 24 hours, she received her first response, a reply from Edison Tech Solutions, one of Braxton's oldest partners. They were impressed by her clarity. They wanted a meeting. Serena felt no rush of excitement. This wasn't about emotion. It was about movement. She scheduled the meeting 3 days later at a neutral conference room downtown, then returned to her files. The next day brought 2 more responses. Then 4. By the end of the week, Serena had secured meetings with half the companies Cassandra predicted would be receptive. She prepared for each one with the same unwavering focus she carried into every part of her life. She didn't dress to impress. She dressed in a way that made her feel grounded. She didn't memorize lines. She understood problems. She didn't try to dominate the room. She guided the conversation with quiet intelligence that made people lean in. One of her earliest meetings involved a company called Trevon Dynamics. Their director, a middle-aged woman named Leona, entered the conference room with an expression that blended curiosity with skepticism. Serena understood that look. It was the look of someone who had been disappointed too many times by leaders who promised solutions and delivered chaos. Leona sat across from Serena and folded her hands. "You're young," she said, "but your proposal reads like someone who's seen a lot." Serena nodded. "I've seen enough to know what works and what doesn't." Leona leaned back. "Tell me what you think is wrong with Braxton Hale's current system." Serena didn't take the bait. "I'm not here to critique anyone," she said calmly. "I'm here to show you what's possible if you want streamlined accuracy and innovation without unnecessary complications." Leona raised her eyebrows, intrigued. "That's a diplomatic answer. It's an honest one." From there, the conversation flowed naturally. Serena explained her analysis, using clear examples and measured projections. She didn't overwhelm Leona with jargon. She didn't try to show off. She stayed grounded in clarity. After an hour, Leona closed her folder and nodded slowly. "You're not like the others who pitched to us," she said. "They all try to sell a dream. You're offering a solution." Serena smiled faintly. "Dreams fade, solutions stay." Leona extended her hand. "We'll work with you." It was said with such conviction that Serena almost felt the echo of her sister's voice in the room. She shook Leona's hand firmly and thanked her. When she left the conference building, she didn't celebrate. She didn't call Cassandra. She simply walked to her car and allowed herself a brief moment of gratitude. Another step, another shift, another piece returning to its rightful place. By the end of the second week, Serena had secured contracts from 3 major clients and interest from 7 others. The momentum felt organic, almost inevitable. Serena presented herself with the kind of authenticity people rarely encountered in high-level business circles. She didn't pretend to know everything. She didn't present herself as a savior. She positioned herself as someone who listened first and spoke only when she had something valuable to say. Her reputation grew quietly, built on conversations rather than noise. Meanwhile, Braxton remained completely oblivious. He continued attending galas, reviewing numbers he didn't fully understand, and polishing his image for the media. He thought he had impressed Serena, believing she was taking her time to accept his offer. He didn't realize that every passing day brought him closer to the unraveling of the empire he built on borrowed brilliance. 2 months later, Serena attended a tech investment summit. The event hosted some of the largest companies in the industry, including several of Braxton's partners. The ballroom bustled with executives carrying briefcases and speaking in low, calculated tones. Serena moved through the crowd with steady confidence, her hair pulled back in a sleek style that framed her face. She wore a navy suit that highlighted her presence without screaming for attention. A group of executives noticed her and waved her over. They welcomed her with genuine interest. Some had heard of her work, some had received her proposals, some had already signed with her. Word had spread faster than she expected, but she handled the attention with poise. While Serena engaged in a conversation with two directors from Jackson Global, she felt a shift in the atmosphere. A familiar energy entered the room. Braxton Hale had arrived. She didn't turn immediately. She allowed herself a moment to breathe before glancing toward the entrance. Braxton walked in wearing a tailored charcoal suit, surrounded by his team. Flashes from cameras lit the air as photographers captured his entrance. He carried himself with the confidence of a man celebrated for accomplishments he didn't earn. But something about his expression seemed slightly strained, as if the pressure of maintaining his image weighed heavier than before. A few people whispered around Serena, mentioning that Braxton's numbers had been unpredictable recently. Investors were concerned. Some contracts had slipped. Some companies were reconsidering their partnerships. Serena listened quietly. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate his struggles. She simply acknowledged that the shift she initiated was quietly spreading. When Braxton eventually noticed her across the room, his face lit up with recognition. He made his way toward her with a polished smile, navigating through small clusters of people who greeted him. Serena prepared herself, but not out of nervousness. She prepared out of respect for her own composure. "Serena," Braxton said warmly as he approached, "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." She turned to him with a calm expression. "Good evening, Braxton." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "I've been waiting for your decision. I hope you're leaning in the right direction." Serena held his gaze. "I'm exploring my options." Braxton chuckled softly. "And here I thought I was making it hard for you to refuse." Serena didn't flinch. Opportunities are rarely about the person offering them, they're about the structure behind them. He tilted his head, clearly intrigued by her composed response. "I like the way you think." Serena didn't offer him a smile. "Thinking is the easy part. Execution is what matters." Braxton studied her face with a slow curiosity that hinted at both interest and confusion. He didn't understand why she didn't soften around him like others did. He didn't understand why she didn't react to his tone, his presence, or his charm. She gave him nothing he expected, which made him pursue the conversation even more. "Let me take you to dinner tomorrow," he said casually. "We can talk numbers, or we can talk life. Whatever you prefer." Serena shook her head with controlled grace. "Dinner complicates business. I prefer clarity." Braxton blinked, surprised. "Most people don't turn down a dinner invitation from me." "I'm not most people," Serena replied. She excused herself and returned to the group she had been speaking with. The executives welcomed her back with respect, continuing the discussion as though nothing unusual had happened. Braxton stood alone for a moment, watching her with a mix of frustration and fascination. He wasn't used to being dismissed so cleanly. He wasn't used to someone choosing boundaries over access. The discomfort settled in his expression before he forced it away and returned to his team. That night, Serena left the summit knowing that the silent shift had officially begun. Her presence challenged him without a single word about the past. Her success confronted him without a single accusation. Her intelligence placed her on a path that grew stronger with each step she took. When she returned home, she placed her keys on the table and sat down on the couch. She pulled out her sister's notebook, the one she kept all these years. The pages were filled with sketches of algorithms, diagrams of systems, and small handwritten notes that carried pieces of her sister's voice. Serena touched the edge of a page gently and closed the book. She wasn't doing this to win. She wasn't doing this to hurt him. She was doing this to bring justice in the quietest way possible. A justice her sister deserved. A justice her heart needed. This was only the beginning. The next few weeks unfolded with a momentum that felt steady rather than rushed, as if the universe moved each piece into place exactly when Serena needed it. She didn't chase opportunity. She simply presented herself with clarity and allowed the right people to recognize her value. Word spread through the industry in a way she didn't expect. It started with a recommendation from Leona at Trevon Dynamics. Then Jaxlin Global mentioned her name during a strategy call with 2 other firms. Soon, smaller companies were reaching out directly, asking for her insight before committing to any new system updates. Serena handled every meeting with the same controlled confidence she carried from the moment she stepped into Braxton's boardroom. She walked into conference rooms with her laptop in hand and her mind fully prepared. She answered questions with patience and offered solutions with the kind of depth that made people trust her instantly. She didn't oversell anything. She didn't brag. She didn't make promises she couldn't deliver. She quietly positioned herself as a reliable alternative to a system that had grown too dependent on its founder's reputation. Her presence stirred conversations behind closed doors. Directors wondered who she really was. Executives who once trusted Braxton began comparing their outcomes to the projections Serena offered. Numbers didn't lie, and neither did her consistency. She delivered results faster than they expected, and each success added weight to her credibility. Serena felt the shift slowly building, like the steady rise of a tide no one noticed until the shoreline changed. But she never lost sight of why she started. Every night, after returning home, she placed her purse on the same small table and sat beside her sister's notebook. Sometimes she touched the cover lightly. Sometimes she opened it and read a few notes. Sometimes she closed her eyes and felt the echo of her sister's laughter from years ago. Those quiet moments reminded her that her journey wasn't about winning. It was about restoration. She wanted her sister's spirit to rest knowing that her work hadn't disappeared. She wanted the child Mariah never got to hold to grow up in Serena's heart with pride, not pain. Meanwhile, Braxton continued to operate as if nothing had shifted. His public image remained polished. His interviews stayed confident. His team still followed his lead. But beneath the surface, cracks began forming in his foundation. A large pharmaceutical client postponed their renewal contract without explanation. A long-time partner requested revisions to their service agreement. His chief financial officer asked for a performance review after noticing subtle changes in client engagement. At first, Braxton dismissed these concerns as normal fluctuations. But as the days passed, the discomfort grew. He replayed his encounter with Serena at the summit in his mind more often than he admitted. He couldn't understand why she refused him so calmly, or why her presence affected him the way it did. He was used to people bending toward his attention. He was used to being the one who controlled every room he entered. With Serena, nothing felt predictable. Nothing felt easy. And for the first time in years, he felt something he didn't want to name. Curiosity mixed with unease. One evening, while reviewing projections, Braxton paused at a downward trend in one of their analytics charts. He read the numbers again, slower this time. The decline wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent. The same pattern appeared across several smaller partners within the system. He frowned, calling for his assistant. When she entered, he pushed the papers toward her with a frustrated sigh. "Why am I looking at this?" he asked. "Find out who they switched to." The assistant scanned the paperwork. Her brows lifted slightly when she saw the vendor names attached to the transfers. "Sir, most of these companies moved to a new consultant." Braxton leaned back. "Name?" She hesitated. "Serena Cole." He felt a small tightening in his chest. Not anger, not panic, something deeper, something unfamiliar. "Set a meeting with their directors," he said quickly, hiding the shift in his expression. "I want to know why they made that move." "Yes, sir," she hurried out, but he already knew why. Serena wasn't just intelligent. She was focused, sharp, and completely unaffected by him. That combination unsettled him. That combination wasn't accidental. He replayed every moment of their meeting. Every word she spoke, every refusal she delivered with calm finality. He didn't know what she wanted, but he sensed she wasn't random. Women who entered his orbit usually reacted to him. Serena didn't. Instead, she made him question himself without lifting her voice, without accusing him, without challenging him directly. And that silence threatened him more than any confrontation ever could. Across the city, Serena prepared for another set of presentations. She adjusted her slides, reviewed her figures, and highlighted the points she knew would matter most. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't excited. She was centered. Her focus sharpened in a way that made every movement feel purposeful. Tonight, she planned to finalize a deal with a company called Newbridge Industries, one of Braxton's mid-tier but influential partners. Securing them would shift industry conversations permanently. She understood the significance but didn't treat it like a trophy. She approached it like another step in the journey her sister started. When she entered the Newbridge building, the conference room was already half full. Directors whispered to each other with clipped urgency, pausing when she stepped inside. They greeted her warmly, inviting her to sit at the head of the table. Serena didn't take the central seat. She chose one beside the projector instead, keeping the mood grounded. Leaders noticed the gesture. It signaled partnership instead of dominance. It signaled cooperation instead of ego. During the meeting, she answered every question with clarity and offered realistic timelines instead of exaggerated promises. Her candor impressed them more than any polished pitch could. When the head director finally closed his notebook and looked around the room, the decision felt unanimous. "We're ready to move forward with you," he said. "Your work speaks for itself." Serena thanked them with a steady voice, shook every hand with respect, and stepped outside into the evening air. For the first time in months, she allowed herself a small breath of satisfaction. Not pride, not victory, satisfaction, the kind that comes when justice begins to take shape quietly without anger. As she walked toward her car, her phone buzzed. It was Cassandra. "How did it go?" Cassandra asked. "Better than expected," Serena replied. Cassandra exhaled softly. "Braxton is starting to notice. His assistant called 3 directors this week." "I know," Serena said. "It was only a matter of time." Cassandra paused. "Are you ready for him to confront you?" Serena leaned against her car, watching the streetlights glow across the quiet road. "I'm not here to fight him. Confrontation isn't my goal." "Then what is?" Cassandra asked gently. Serena looked up at the sky, letting the silence sit between them for a moment. "Understanding," she said. "For him." "And for me," Cassandra softened her tone. "Your sister would be proud." Serena closed her eyes. "I hope so." As the weeks continued, the shift became undeniable. More companies signed with her. More executives requested her input. More industry leaders mentioned her name with respect and curiosity. People who had once been loyal to Braxton began questioning his direction. Journalists wrote small articles about the rise of a new consultant whose analyses were reshaping the field. And through all of it, Serena stayed humble and grounded, keeping her pace steady and her intentions clear. Meanwhile, Braxton felt tension creeping into his daily routines. He tried to dismiss the concern, but every report he read told the same story. Even his board members noticed the pattern. During one quarterly review, his CFO pointed out that client loyalty had shifted significantly. "Numbers aren't catastrophic," the CFO said, "but they're shifting in a direction we need to understand." Braxton straightened his tie, trying to sound unfazed. "I'll personally handle the situation." But the board wasn't convinced. They exchanged glances before one of them spoke. "Braxton, for years we trusted your judgment, but something is changing. We need transparency. Who is this consultant companies keep mentioning? Why are they choosing her?" Braxton felt a prickle at the back of his neck. He cleared his throat. "It's temporary. I have it under control." He ended the meeting abruptly, dismissing their concerns. But when he walked into his office and closed the door, the silence hit him with a weight he didn't expect. He sat down slowly, staring at the city skyline through his window. Something deep inside him felt unsettled. Serena wasn't just taking clients. She was shifting the entire narrative. She was dismantling his empire without touching him, without accusing him, without even appearing on his radar as a threat. It was the same quiet intelligence Mariah once carried, the same intelligence he exploited, and that realization stirred something heavy in his chest. One night, after reviewing yet another report showing a client loss, Braxton called his assistant back into his office. He tapped his fingers against the desk in a rhythm that betrayed his frustration. "Find out everything you can about Serena Cole," he said. "Where she worked before, who she learned from, who she's connected to, everything." The assistant nodded nervously. "Yes, sir." But even with research, nothing would reveal the truth he needed most. Serena wasn't just connected to the companies he was losing, she was connected to his past, his greatest mistake, his deepest betrayal, and the child he never knew existed. While Braxton tried to solve the mystery, Serena continued to rise. She expanded her operations with a small team of analysts who respected her leadership. She trained them personally, teaching them to approach problems with patience and precision rather than panic. They admired her ability to stay calm under pressure and her willingness to guide without condescension. She treated everyone with dignity, and in return, they followed her wholeheartedly. One evening, as her team packed up after a long day, a young analyst named Aaron approached her. "Can I ask something personal?" Aaron said softly. Serena looked up from her laptop. "Of course." Aaron hesitated before speaking. "Where do you get your strength from? You never seem shaken, you're always centered." Serena closed her laptop and rested her hands on it gently. "Strength doesn't come from standing tall all the time," she said. "It comes from surviving moments that almost broke you without letting them turn you into someone you're not." Aaron nodded slowly, absorbing the wisdom in her words. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I needed to hear that." Serena smiled softly. "We all do sometimes." After the team left, Serena sat alone in the office, surrounded by notes, charts, and progress sheets. She felt the weight of the journey more vividly tonight. She remembered the night Mariah cried into her lap, pregnant and scared, whispering that she had made a mistake by trusting a man who valued her ideas more than her heart. Serena tightened her jaw slightly. She wasn't driven by anger or bitterness, but by promise. A promise she made 7 years ago on a cold night when her sister held her stomach and said she wished she could go back and fix everything. Serena whispered to her softly, "I'll fix it for you." Tonight felt like another piece of that promise falling into place. Across town, Braxton sat in his office long after the building emptied. Papers were spread across his desk. Reports, client emails, market projections. At the center lay a single sheet with Serena's name highlighted. He stared at it with a mix of confusion and something that almost resembled fear. He didn't understand why she moved him this way. He didn't understand why her calmness unsettled him more than any competitor ever had. He didn't understand why, for the first time in years, he saw the reflection of his past in the silence of a woman who refused to be impressed by him. And he wasn't ready for the truth that would soon break open everything he thought he knew. Serena, meanwhile, continued her quiet climb. The industry was starting to whisper her name, and she was just getting started. The following month unfolded in a way neither Serena nor Braxton could have predicted. For Serena, it was a period of steady progress that felt more like alignment than luck. Every day brought another email, another meeting request, another conversation with leaders who wanted a new direction and trusted her ability to deliver it. For Braxton, that same month carried a tension that pressed against him quietly at first, then steadily, then loudly enough that even he could no longer dismiss it. Serena remained centered. She worked with calm focus, meeting each new challenge with the same clarity she used when she first stepped into that boardroom months earlier. She woke up each morning with purpose, prepared her day with precision, and ended her evenings with quiet reflection, always pausing by her sister's notebook before turning off the lights. She never rushed. She never forced anything. She simply let the truth guide her footsteps. Her firm grew rapidly. Cassandra handled external negotiations, while Aaron helped reorganize the data structures Serena needed for expansion. Serena taught her team to prioritize integrity over speed, clarity over ego, and efficiency over noise. Her team admired her without question. They saw the way she handled pressure, the way she never raised her voice, the way she carried herself with a dignity that spread to anyone around her. They felt better just by working beside her. One morning, while reviewing the latest performance chart, Cassandra knocked on Serena's office door before stepping inside with a concerned look. "We need to talk," she said, placing a stack of printed reports on the desk. Serena gestured for her to sit. "What happened?" Cassandra opened the first report. It showed a bold red line trending downward next to the name Hale Analytics Corporation. The decline wasn't drastic, but it was consistent. Serena leaned forward, studying the details without emotion. "Is this recent?" she asked. "Yesterday," Cassandra said, "and these numbers aren't similar to what we saw last month." "This is different." Serena tapped a finger lightly on the edge of the report. "Tell me," Cassandra sighed softly. "He lost 3 more contracts this week. One of them is a company he's had since the beginning. Serena didn't react, she simply nodded once. Who? Gridcorp Global. Serena paused. That company was one of the first clients who trusted Mariah when she was young and hopeful, before her design was taken from her and repackaged under someone else's name. The decision to leave him wouldn't have been easy for them. These executives valued loyalty. They must have struggled with the choice before signing with someone new. Anything else? Serena asked. Cassandra flipped to another report. Braxton requested an emergency meeting with his board. I'm guessing they want answers he can't give. Serena closed the file calmly. He knew this would happen eventually. He just didn't expect it to come from someone who wasn't chasing him. Cassandra studied her for a moment. Are you prepared for him to learn the truth? Serena's voice stayed steady. The truth was always going to find him, I just didn't push it. That afternoon, Serena met with another potential partner, a mid-sized firm specializing in infrastructure analytics. She wore a simple deep green blouse tucked into tailored trousers and kept her hair pinned neatly behind her. She didn't dress to impress. She dressed to stay grounded. As she entered the conference room, the executives greeted her with warm smiles, already familiar with her reputation. We appreciate your direct approach, one of them said as they shook her hand. People speak highly of you. Serena listened humbly. She presented her proposal with clarity and answered their questions with respect. She didn't rush through the details. She didn't hide anything behind complicated language. She gave them the truth plainly, and they trusted it. The meeting lasted an hour, and by the end, the director closed his notebook. We want you to lead our restructuring, he said. You're exactly what we need. Serena nodded politely. Thank you, I'll send over the next steps by tomorrow. As she walked out of the building, a familiar tightening sensation pressed lightly in her chest, the same quiet reminder of how far she had come, how far her sister's work had traveled through her hands. She didn't celebrate. She stayed steady, breathing softly as she stepped into the sunlight. But across town, the tension inside Braxton Hale's office had reached its breaking point. His board gathered around the conference table, flipping through reports with stiff expressions. Their conversations grew sharper, more urgent, more focused on the decline in numbers they could no longer ignore. Braxton stood at the head of the table, trying to maintain the confidence that had once carried him through every situation. But something was different today. His posture wasn't as relaxed, his tone wasn't as smooth, his eyes carried an unease he couldn't hide. What we're seeing, one board member said carefully, isn't a temporary fluctuation. This is a shift in leadership trust. Another member nodded. Your partners are moving in a different direction, Braxton. We need to know why. Braxton clenched his jaw lightly. I'm handling it. With respect, another voice added, you haven't been handling it. If anything, you've been avoiding it. The room fell silent. Braxton's shoulders stiffened. I built this company. One board member closed his folder slowly. No one is denying your effort, but we're losing ground and we need answers. The CFO finally spoke. Almost every company that moved recently switched to a consultant named Serena Cole. Do you know her? Braxton hesitated so slightly that only a few people noticed. I've met her once, he said. She's talented. But she isn't a threat to us. A board member raised an eyebrow. If she isn't a threat, explain the numbers. Braxton swallowed, unable to answer. When the meeting ended, he remained in the room alone, staring at the empty chairs. His thoughts drifted back to Serena's expression the first time he met her, the calmness in her eyes, the strength in her voice, the way she refused to engage with his charm. She wasn't impressed by him. She wasn't intimidated by him. She wasn't moved by him. And for the first time, he wondered if she might be connected to a truth he wanted to forget. That night, after the building emptied, he sat in his office replaying memories he hadn't allowed himself to face. The early years, the meetings with Mariah, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her vision, the way she trusted him when she should have questioned him, the way she cried when he told her they needed to pause their partnership. He had told himself it was necessary for business. He convinced himself she would recover. He never expected her to disappear. He never looked for her. He didn't know she had been pregnant. He didn't know she lost everything. He pushed the memories away and stood abruptly, pacing the room. He didn't understand why Serena stirred those old emotions. He didn't understand why her presence felt like a mirror he didn't want to look into. He didn't know that the truth was about to rise through every crack of his empire. Meanwhile, Serena attended a networking event hosted by the Chamber of Industry Professionals. The ballroom was filled with executives exchanging business cards and discussing market trends. Serena walked in with quiet confidence, nodding politely as people greeted her or whispered her name with respectful curiosity. She moved through conversations with calm ease, respecting each person's time and offering insight only when it added value. Halfway through the evening, she stepped aside near a tall window overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered with golden lights reflecting off the buildings. Serena allowed herself a moment of stillness, her thoughts drifting to her sister again. She could almost hear Mariah's voice telling her to stay grounded, to stay patient, to stay true to herself. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Ms. Cole," she turned. A young woman holding a portfolio approached her nervously. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said quietly. "I just wanted to thank you. I saw your recent interview online. I'm studying data systems, and hearing you talk about integrity and balance gave me courage to stay in the field." Serena's expression softened. "I'm glad it helped." The woman nodded quickly. "I want to learn from you someday. I want to do things the right way." Serena offered a small smile. "You already took the first step. You asked for guidance. That takes strength." The woman's eyes brightened. "Thank you." After she walked away, Serena's heart settled into a warm rhythm. She didn't chase recognition. She didn't crave admiration. But knowing she touched someone's path reminded her that her sister's legacy lived through her choices. Later that same evening, while Serena continued networking, a group of executives nearby whispered with curiosity. "That's her," one said quietly. "The consultant." "Yes, the one companies keep switching to." Another executive glanced at Serena with thoughtful interest. "I heard she's outshining Braxton Hale." "He's losing his grip," someone else added. Their conversation drifted away, but the weight of their words remained. Serena didn't seek to overshadow anyone. She didn't want to take his place. She only wanted fairness. She only wanted restoration. She only wanted the truth to rise on its own. But in the business world, truth had ripple effects, and those ripples were now waves. 2 days later, Serena received an unexpected email from one of the largest firms in the industry, Dynex Innovations. Their message was short but heavy with intent. "We've been observing your recent work. We'd like to schedule a private meeting to discuss a long-term partnership. We believe your approach aligns with the future of our company." Serena read the email twice before forwarding it to Cassandra. Dynex was one of the highest influence partners in the market. Their decision could shift industry standards. Cassandra called immediately. "Do you understand what this means?" she asked breathlessly. Serena leaned back in her chair. "It means the momentum is moving faster than expected." "It means," Cassandra said, "you're becoming the center of a conversation he once owned." Serena closed her laptop softly. "I'm not competing with him. I'm completing what my sister started." Cassandra didn't argue. She knew Serena meant every word. That same afternoon, as Serena prepared documents for the Dynex meeting, a message popped up on her phone from an unknown number. "We need to talk." Braxton Hale. Serena didn't react. She didn't delete it. She didn't reply. She simply placed her phone face down on the table and continued her work. Her silence wasn't avoidance. Her silence was strength. Across the city, Braxton sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the message he sent. He waited for a reply that didn't come. The longer her silence stretched, the more restless he became. He paced the room, replaying every conversation they had, every subtle expression she made, every boundary she held firmly in place. He didn't understand her, and not understanding her unsettled him more than losing clients. He poured himself a drink and sat on the balcony overlooking the city. Lights flickered below, reminding him of the nights he pushed aside guilt, hid behind success, and convinced himself he had done nothing wrong. He told himself he deserved everything he had. He told himself he built his empire from nothing. But deep inside, he knew better. And Serena's presence had become the echo of a truth he had buried for years. She didn't need to confront him. She didn't need to expose him. Her silence was enough to make him face himself. Back in her office, Serena closed her files and turned off the lights. She stood by the window for a moment, watching the city breathe. She felt grounded, strong, clear. The journey had been long, but she was walking it with quiet dignity. She pressed her hand gently on her sister's notebook lying on the desk. "This is for you," she whispered softly. Outside the window, the world continued moving. but a shift had begun inside the man who once stole everything. A shift that would soon force him to face the truth he avoided for 7 years. Serena was no longer a quiet presence in his industry. She was becoming the mirror he couldn't turn away from, and the reflection was about to show him everything he tried to forget. The morning after Braxton sent that unanswered message, he walked into his office carrying the weight of a man who no longer trusted the ground beneath him. He greeted his staff quietly and shut himself inside the glass walled executive room, hoping no one noticed the tightness in his expression. He was used to stepping into spaces with confidence. He was used to believing people admired him, but something inside him had shifted, something he couldn't name, something that pressed against his chest whenever he thought of Serena's calm face. He sat at his desk and pulled up the latest client performance metrics. The numbers didn't lie. Contract after contract showed decline. Renewal dates were being postponed. A few companies that once praised his leadership now avoided his calls. Even his internal operations began reacting to the slow uncertainty creeping into the system. His employees weren't panicking, but they felt the energy changing. Anxiety traveled quietly through hallways and informal conversations. When his assistant entered with a folder, she paused at the sight of him staring blankly at the screen. "Sir?" she asked. He blinked and straightened his posture. "Yes." "The board wants revised projections by tomorrow." He nodded. "Leave them there." She hesitated before placing the folder on the table. "There's something else. Dynex Innovations is making an announcement in 2 days. They're hosting a private gathering. People are saying it's big." Braxton narrowed his eyes slightly. "Did they invite us?" "No, sir." He dismissed her with a simple nod, but the question lingered inside his chest. Dynex never made major decisions without informing him. For years, he had been part of their strategy sessions. They trusted him. They consulted him. They valued his boldness. Now they were moving in silence, and silence felt dangerous. He leaned back in his chair and stared through the glass panels that overlooked the city. His reflection stared back at him faintly, blending into the skyline. He wondered if his success had been too easy, too comfortable, too dependent on the idea that he could always talk his way out of anything. But the more he thought about it, the more his chest tightened. For the first time in years, he felt something close to vulnerability. Across the city, Serena arrived at her office with a clear mind. She carried her laptop under her arm and greeted her team with a small smile before heading to the conference room for their weekly briefing. Her team gathered around the oval table with notebooks and laptops open, waiting for her direction. Aaron sat closest to her with a nervous excitement. "We confirmed the time with Dynex for tomorrow. They want a 2-hour closed session with you." Serena nodded. "Good. Prepare the revised models and the comparative analyses. They'll need to see the impact across multiple sectors, not just projections." Cassandra flipped through her binder. "I've also arranged a follow-up meeting with Trevon Dynamics after the Dynex session. They want additional refinements to the restructure you've been designing." Serena listened carefully, then gave instructions with calm precision. She didn't show the slightest sign of rush or pressure. Her team admired her ability to remain centered even when the stakes rose higher with each passing day. The room felt grounded because she was grounded. They trusted her direction, and she carried that trust without arrogance. As the meeting continued, her phone buzzed quietly. She turned it face up, another message from Braxton. "We need to meet. Name the time." She locked the screen without responding and placed the phone back on the table. Aaron noticed the gesture but didn't comment. Cassandra, however, lifted her eyes knowingly. "He's trying to reach you again," Cassandra said softly when the meeting wrapped. Serena gathered her papers. "His urgency isn't my concern." Cassandra stepped closer. "You know he won't stop. He feels something, even if he doesn't know what." Serena looked at her with steady eyes. "Let him feel it." Cassandra nodded quietly. Serena's silence wasn't avoidance. It was control. It was a reminder that not every battle needed noise. Sometimes the lesson was clearer when the other person stood alone with the echoes of their choices. Later that afternoon, while Serena reviewed proposals, a soft knock tapped on her open door. Aaron entered with a hesitant expression. "Can I ask something?" she said. Serena set down her pen. "Sure. Do you think he'll eventually put the pieces together?" Serena leaned back in her chair. "Everyone meets the truth at the time they're ready, not the time they want. He'll see it. Not because I tell him, but because life always brings clarity. Aaron nodded pensively and stepped back out. Serena returned to her work with calm focus. Across town, Braxton wasn't calm. He stood in his office pacing the length of the room, replaying memories he had buried for years. He remembered the early days with Mariah, the brainstorming sessions, the long nights discussing algorithms, the quiet excitement she carried every time a breakthrough happened. He remembered her optimism. He remembered her trust. He remembered the soft tremble in her voice the last time they spoke. But memory was selective, and he had spent years selecting the parts that made him look innocent. He poured himself a glass of water and sat down. He finally asked himself the question he avoided. Why did Serena look at him with the same steadiness Mariah once had? Why did her silence feel familiar? Why did her presence disturb him? He didn't have the answer, but the question alone made him uneasy. He opened his laptop and searched her name again. Every article, every company she partnered with, every accomplishment she earned only deepened his confusion. Her rise wasn't normal. It wasn't random. It wasn't a coincidence. Something connected her to his past, and he knew it in his bones, though he couldn't shape the full truth. He closed the laptop and rubbed his forehead. For the first time in years, he felt guilt. Real guilt. And guilt had a way of removing illusions. Meanwhile, Serena finished her work for the day and drove to her sister's old apartment building. The complex wasn't in great shape anymore, but the small courtyard still carried faint echoes of laughter and memories. Serena parked her car and stepped out quietly, walking past the bench where she and Mariah once sat during summer evenings when life felt simple. She didn't come here often. The place held too much weight, but tonight she felt drawn to it. She stood beneath the tall oak tree in the center of the courtyard and closed her eyes. For a moment, she brushed her fingers along the old wooden trunk, almost feeling her sister standing beside her. "I'm getting closer," she whispered softly. "Not to hurt him. To honor you." A soft breeze rustled the leaves above her, and she let the silence settle around her before heading back to her car. The next day arrived with clear sunlight and a steady calm. Serena walked into Dynex's headquarters with her portfolio in hand. Executives were already waiting in the private conference room, some standing, some flipping through printed documents, all looking eager for her insight. The company's president, a tall woman with sharp features named Genevieve Wells, stepped forward to greet Serena personally. "Thank you for coming," Genevieve said warmly. "We've been following your work closely." Serena shook her hand firmly. "I appreciate the opportunity." They sat down and began the session. Serena presented her model with clarity and efficiency, walking them through each projection and structural recommendation. She answered their questions thoroughly, offering examples drawn from experience rather than speculation. Her calm presence filled the room with confidence. Genevieve watched her carefully. "We've worked with many consultants," she said after an hour, "but none understand the core of this industry the way you do." Serena nodded politely. "I believe solutions need to make life easier, not harder. Complexity without purpose is noise." Genevieve smiled. "That's exactly what we're looking for." They continued the discussion until every executive in the room felt convinced. When the meeting ended, Genevieve extended her hand again. "We want you to lead our long-term transition," she said with certainty. "Your vision aligns with where we need to go." Serena accepted with a quiet, steady expression. "Thank you, I'll prepare the next steps." As she left the building, her phone buzzed once more. Another message from Braxton. "I deserve to know what this is. Meet me." She didn't reply. She drove back to her office and finalized the Dynex summary before heading home. When she walked into her apartment, she placed her keys on the table and exhaled slowly. She sat on her couch for a moment, letting the weight of the day settle. After a few minutes, she reached for her sister's notebook and opened it carefully. A page slipped loose, one she hadn't noticed before. It contained notes written in a softer script, followed by a date, 7 years ago. The same week everything fell apart for Mariah. Serena's eyes traced the words. "I wish I could tell him the truth. I wish he understood what he took from me. I wish I had the strength to fight for myself. Maybe one day someone will." Serena's chest tightened. She closed the notebook gently and rested her hand over it. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm doing it." She sat there until the room felt steady again. That same night, Braxton walked into an upscale lounge for a scheduled dinner with investors. His assistant trailed behind him nervously, sensing the tension in his posture. But as he entered the private dining room, he realized half the people he expected didn't show up. The few who did carried restrained expressions, their conversations awkward and clipped. One investor finally spoke. "Braxton, there's talk going around. Big firms are shifting toward another consultant. People are rethinking partnerships." Braxton swallowed. "People talk all the time. They'll come around." Another investor cleared his throat. "This isn't gossip, it's movement. You need to address it." Braxton forced a steady expression. "I'll take care of it." He didn't stay long. He left the lounge early, stepping into the night with a heavy silence surrounding him. He sat in his car for several minutes before starting the engine, letting the weight of everything sink in. He wasn't losing clients because of poor performance. He wasn't losing them because of market trends. He was losing them because someone else offered something he never could: integrity, clarity, a stable vision. He pressed his forehead against the steering wheel for a moment. His chest tightened as memories of Mariah resurfaced like old wounds breaking open. And then it hit him with a sudden clarity, a feeling he didn't want to name. The calmness in Serena's eyes, the steadiness in her voice, the familiarity he couldn't shake. He whispered her name under his breath. Serena Cole. Something connected. Something he couldn't yet shape, but he felt it, and it terrified him. Across the city, Serena stood on her balcony looking at the quiet skyline. She wrapped a light shawl around her shoulders as the breeze carried a cool breath across her skin. The night felt still, almost waiting for the next shift. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't check it. She simply looked at the city lights and whispered softly, "You're close to seeing it, Braxton. When you do, I hope you finally understand." Her journey was never about breaking him. It was about opening his eyes, and he was finally on the edge of seeing the truth he had run from for 7 long years. The next week moved quickly for the industry, but slowly for Braxton Hale. For the first time in his life, he felt as if the world didn't bend around him. Meetings that once came easily now required effort. Calls that once gave him clarity now brought confusion. Partners who once admired him now questioned everything. He felt the shift in every email, in every cautious tone, in every quiet hesitation that lingered when someone said his name. Meanwhile, Serena's world sharpened with purpose. She entered her office early on Monday morning, her footsteps light against the polished floor. Cassandra and Aaron were already waiting for her in the conference room, surrounded by charts, projections, and signed agreements from the last 48 hours. The stack was thicker than anything they'd seen since the firm began. Cassandra smiled when Serena walked in. "We've crossed the threshold," she said. Serena placed her bag on the table. "Meaning," Cassandra pushed forward a binder filled with printed reports. "You've officially surpassed his quarterly acquisition rate. Companies are switching to you not because they're leaving him, but because they trust you." Aaron's eyes were bright with pride. "Some of them told me directly. They said you listen. They said your clarity gives them real direction." Serena nodded quietly, scanning the binder. She didn't read it with arrogance. She read it with the same calm focus she carried into every part of her life. "It's moving faster than I expected," Serena said. Cassandra leaned forward. "This is the moment, Serena. This is when he'll show up. He's starting to feel something he doesn't recognize." Aaron spoke gently. "Fear," Cassandra nodded. "Fear, guilt, both." Serena closed the binder. "Emotions don't concern me. Outcomes do." "And we're getting close." As they reviewed the week's projections, Serena's phone vibrated once more. She didn't pick it up. Cassandra glanced down at the screen. "He called again," she said. 7 times this week." Serena kept her eyes on the documents. "He'll stop when he understands the silence." Aaron shifted in her seat. "Do you plan to ever respond?" Serena didn't hesitate. "When the time is right." Her tone wasn't sharp. It was controlled, grounded, full of quiet intention. After the meeting, Serena stepped into her office and closed the door gently behind her. She leaned against the wooden surface for a brief moment, letting herself exhale slowly. Her gaze drifted to the small photograph of Mariah on the shelf, Mariah smiling, hopeful, unaware of the betrayal that would shape the rest of her life. "Hold on a little longer," Serena whispered softly. "We're almost there." She turned back to her desk and resumed her work, replying to partners, refining strategies, and preparing for 2 major presentations scheduled that week. Her days felt full, but she never felt overwhelmed. She had found a rhythm that balanced her purpose with her peace. Across the city, Braxton wasn't balanced at all. He stood in front of his board again, the energy in the room heavy with impatience and concern. The board members looked at him with a mix of confusion and suppressed frustration. "We need answers," one of them said firmly. "You still haven't addressed the decline." Braxton cleared his throat. "We're reviewing internal structures. We'll recover." Another member leaned forward. "Recover from what? You still haven't explained why Dynex, Trevon Dynamics, and multiple mid-tier firms walked away." A third voice chimed in. "Every company that left us has one thing in common. They all switched to Serena Cole." The room fell silent. Braxton felt heat rise in his chest. He stared at the polished table, unable to form a steady response. "Who is she?" someone demanded. Braxton swallowed. "A consultant." "That's not an answer," another voice said sharply. "Is she your former employee, your competitor, your partner, your liability?" Braxton's jaw tightened. "She's none of those." One of the older board members studied his face carefully. "Then why do you look like she's all of them?" Braxton didn't reply. He closed his folder and walked out of the meeting abruptly, ignoring the startled expressions behind him. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed air. He walked down the hallway, past employees who sensed the tension but didn't dare ask questions. He finally stepped outside into the cold afternoon breeze and leaned against the building's stone wall. His breathing felt uneven, his thoughts tangled, his certainty fractured. He whispered her name to himself again. Serena. The name tasted familiar, too familiar. Meanwhile, Serena spent the afternoon preparing for the second half of her expansion. She had grown her firm enough to handle large-scale transitions. Now she needed to secure long-term stability for her team and her vision. That meant structuring everything with lasting accuracy. She called Cassandra into her office. "We need to expand the analytics department," Serena said, scanning the blueprint on her screen. "Not just analysts. We need specialists in integration and projections." Cassandra nodded. "I can start interviewing by next week." "Good," Serena said. "Make sure they align with our core values. Skills matter, but character matters more." Cassandra smiled softly. "That's why this works, Serena. You don't build from ego, you build from purpose." They spent the next hour organizing new roles, refining client reports, and smoothing out communication channels. Serena worked with full presence, asking questions when needed and guiding decisions with clarity. By evening, she took a break and stepped outside the building, letting the sunset wash over the city. The sky held quiet shades of orange and red that softened into the horizon. She stood there for a moment, breathing in the calm air, grounding herself in the present. The world around her felt open, almost ready. Across town, Braxton wasn't ready for anything. He returned to his penthouse late that night with paperwork scattered inside his briefcase and tension sitting tight across his shoulders. He threw the briefcase onto the couch, loosened his tie, and walked straight to the kitchen to pour water. His hands shook slightly as he held the glass. He pushed himself onto a bar stool and stared out the wide window that captured the city lights. For years, he had seen the city as his kingdom. Tonight, it felt like it was slipping away. He couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Something inside him whispered a thought he didn't want to accept. He had built his empire on a foundation that didn't belong to him. For 7 years, he had suppressed the guilt. He convinced himself that Mariah exaggerated her contribution. He convinced himself the partnership had dissolved naturally. He convinced himself she didn't need credit because he handled the growth. But deep down, he always knew he carried her vision, not his own. He remembered her tears. He remembered the hurt. He remembered walking away, thinking it was best for both of them. He didn't know she was pregnant. He didn't know she cried for nights afterward. He didn't know she disappeared because she had nothing left. He closed his eyes. The memories hit harder than he expected. "What did I do?" he whispered to the empty room. His phone buzzed. He grabbed it instantly. But the screen only showed market alerts and board messages. No reply from Serena. He ran his hand through his hair, frustration building. He wanted to demand answers. He wanted to shake the truth out of the silence. But deep inside, he knew the truth was already forming. It was in the way she looked at him. In the way she peeled through his charm effortlessly. In the way she refused dinner with a calm boundary he couldn't understand. Her presence had unsettled him from the first moment because her spirit carried someone else inside it. A shadow of someone he once betrayed. A shadow of someone he still avoided in his mind. A shadow of someone whose name he hadn't allowed himself to say in years. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead into his hands as realization crept through him slowly, painfully. "Mariah," he whispered. It felt like a confession, not to anyone else. To himself. The next morning, Serena arrived early for her meeting with one of her newest partners. The company specialized in digital health systems, and their transition required careful evaluation. She entered the conference room and sat with the director, a kind man named Peter who appreciated her clarity. After an hour of detail, heavy discussion, Peter leaned back with a thoughtful sigh. "You're changing the industry, Ms. Cole," he said. "People trust you in a way I've never seen before." Serena nodded respectfully. "Trust is earned through honesty, not promises." Peter smiled. "Well, you've earned ours." When she left the meeting, Aaron caught up with her in the hallway. "Someone's waiting for you downstairs," Aaron said. Serena paused. "Who?" Aaron hesitated. "It's him." Serena's expression didn't shift, but something inside her straightened. "Thank you," Serena said quietly. She walked through the lobby with steady steps. The building's tall windows cast sunlight across the floor, creating a pattern of brightness and shadow. When she reached the entrance, she saw him. Braxton Hale stood near the glass doors, dressed in a charcoal suit, phone in hand, shoulders tense. He lifted his eyes the moment she approached. For a second he froze. Then he exhaled faintly, as if seeing her brought relief and confusion at the same time. "Serena," he said, stepping toward her. She stopped at a comfortable distance. "You shouldn't be here," he swallowed. "I needed to talk to you. You've been ignoring my calls." "I've been prioritizing work," she said calmly. He nodded, though his eyes held a mix of frustration and desperation. "I need to understand something," he said quietly. "Why are you doing this? Why are you taking my clients? Why are you dismantling what I built?" Serena's tone stayed steady. "I'm not dismantling anything, I'm building something of my own." His voice tightened. "But it's affecting my company." Serena raised her chin slightly. "The industry chooses what feels ethical, not what feels comfortable." Braxton looked at her closely, really looked, and something in his expression flickered. A recognition, a memory, a shadow. He stepped back slightly. "You remind me of someone." Serena didn't move. "I know," he blinked slowly. "Have we met before, beyond that first meeting?" Serena kept her voice calm. "No, but you've met someone who shaped everything about me." He swallowed, his chest tightening. "Who?" Serena didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence guided him toward the truth. Braxton stared at her with growing tension, his breath unsteady. And then it hit him, like a weight, like a memory he had tried to bury. Like a truth he didn't want to accept. His voice cracked. "Mariah." Serena didn't look away. Braxton stumbled back a step, his face draining of color. "Oh God," he whispered, "you're her sister." A quiet breath left Serena's chest. Not relief, not satisfaction, just truth settling between them like a long, awaited arrival. Braxton covered his mouth with a trembling hand, his eyes glazing with shock and something close to sorrow. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know she was pregnant." "I didn't know she." Serena's voice interrupted him softly. "You didn't care to know." He froze. Her tone wasn't angry, it wasn't loud, it wasn't vengeful, it was truth, plain, steady, unavoidable. Braxton's shoulders slumped as if the truth finally broke through the illusion he lived in for 7 years. His voice shook. "Where is she?" Serena looked at him with a calm he couldn't understand. "She's gone." Braxton staggered as if the floor shifted beneath him. She died?" Serena nodded once. Braxton sat down on one of the lobby benches abruptly, burying his face in his hands. His body trembled, his breath shook. His world cracked, not from the loss of clients, not from the decline in numbers, not from the board's pressure, but from the reality that the woman he once betrayed suffered alone while he profited from her brilliance. And sitting across from him was the sister who carried her legacy with dignity he didn't deserve. Serena watched him for a moment, giving him space. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were wet with shame. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't want to hurt her. I was selfish. I was blind." Serena nodded slowly. "Guilt is a beginning, not an ending." Braxton wiped his face, breathing unevenly. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. Serena met his eyes. "Because you needed to arrive here yourself. Not because I forced you. Because truth has to meet a person when they're ready to face it." He nodded, shaking. "And now?" he asked. "What happens now?" Serena looked at him steadily. "Now," she said softly, "you learn the lesson my sister never got to teach you." His breath caught. "And you get the chance to grow from it." She didn't walk away, she didn't raise her voice, she didn't punish him. She simply let the truth sit between them, heavy, real, transformative. Braxton took a slow breath, grounding himself. He whispered, "Tell me what I can do." Serena's voice was gentle. "You can start by understanding what she gave you and what you took." She turned toward the exit. Before she stepped out, she added, "And then we'll talk." Braxton watched her leave with a face full of grief he couldn't run from anymore. For the first time in his life, he realized he wasn't losing a company. He was facing the cost of a choice he made 7 years ago, and that truth shook him deeper than anything numbers could ever show. The day after Serena revealed the truth, Braxton woke with a heaviness he couldn't escape. He sat in his penthouse for hours, still wearing yesterday's clothes, staring across the room at nothing in particular. He kept turning over the memory of her voice, the steady tone she used when she said her sister's name, and the way the whole world seemed to pause the moment he realized who she was. The blinds were half open and sunlight spread slowly across the floor, yet he felt as if he were sitting in a dim place where time refused to move. He didn't go to the office and didn't return calls. His assistant left 3 voice messages asking if he planned to attend the board meeting, but he ignored them all. He stayed seated on the couch with his hands clasped tightly together, replaying the past with an honesty he had never allowed himself to feel. He remembered Mariah clearly, her soft voice, her bright ideas, her certainty that their project would change the future of analytics. She believed he would protect her work the same way she trusted him to protect her heart. He remembered her excitement when she printed her first full algorithm draft, showing him the design as if she were offering him a piece of her future. He also remembered the night she cried after he decided to claim ownership under a revised partnership agreement she didn't fully understand. At the time, he convinced himself she was overreacting. He told himself she wouldn't have known how to scale the business anyway. He told himself she would thank him one day for making tough decisions. Those excuses kept him comfortable for years, but they had no strength left the moment Serena looked him in the eye and told him the truth he tried to bury. As the sun climbed higher, he forced himself to stand. He walked to the window and stared down at the city. He had always looked at this view with pride. For years, he saw the skyline as a monument to his success. Today it felt cold and distant, as if every building reflected back the truth he had ignored. He pressed his hand against the glass, feeling the chill through his palm. For the first time in a very long time, guilt felt real. Across the city, Serena started her day with her usual calm rhythm. She dressed in a soft gray blouse, tied her hair neatly, and arrived at the office before her team. She placed her bag on her desk and took a moment to settle herself. Yesterday had been heavy, but she didn't carry the weight with chaos. She processed the truth with quiet strength. When Cassandra and Aaron joined her, they noticed the calm but also sensed the emotional depth beneath it. Cassandra stepped into the office first. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. Serena closed her laptop and faced her. "Steady," she said. He needed to know. Aaron stood near the doorway, unsure if she should speak. When Serena nodded, she stepped inside. Did he understand everything? Serena leaned back slightly in her chair. He understood enough to face himself. "The rest is his work, not mine." Cassandra gave a slow nod. "This is a turning point for him and for you." Serena didn't disagree. She placed her notebook on the table and looked at both women. "Today we move forward. There are meetings to prepare, clients to update, and projections to finalize. What happened yesterday is part of the story, not a distraction from the mission." Cassandra smiled softly. "That's why people trust you. You don't lose focus." Serena returned a small smile but didn't linger in the moment. She opened her laptop and began guiding her team through the day's agenda. She reviewed proposals, refined data models, and answered questions with patience. She remained composed through every discussion, even though a piece of her heart stayed with the memory of her sister and the journey that led her here. By early afternoon, the office was busy. Aaron handled client correspondence, Cassandra coordinated upcoming presentations, and Serena prepared for a virtual session with a large firm considering a long-term partnership. The entire team felt the weight of their growing reputation, yet Serena's presence kept the environment stable. Meanwhile, Braxton forced himself to drive to the office after hours of sitting alone. He walked through the hallway with a stiff posture, each step heavier than the last. Employees greeted him politely, but he didn't respond. He shut himself inside his office, avoiding any conversation. He opened his laptop and tried to review quarterly metrics, but the numbers didn't make sense. His mind drifted again and again to the moment Serena told him Mariah was gone. The shock of that truth hadn't faded. It clung to him like a shadow. He remembered Mariah's last message to him, the one he never acknowledged. He had been too consumed with scaling the business, attending conferences, and building relationships with investors to pay attention to how she felt. He told himself he was doing the right thing, but he realized now that he never truly listened. Not once. And now the person who carried her memory the closest had shown him the truth in a way he couldn't escape. He whispered quietly to the empty room, "How do I fix something that can't be undone?" No one answered. The silence felt like the only honest response. Later that evening, Serena attended a private roundtable discussion with several industry leaders. The atmosphere inside the event hall felt thoughtful and composed, with directors seated around a long table discussing innovations and ethical leadership. Serena contributed her perspective with clarity, never raising her voice or pushing for attention. Her insights came from the kind of lived understanding that impressed even the most seasoned executives. A director seated beside her leaned over during the break. "You have a natural way of grounding people," he said. "It's rare in this field." Serena nodded with appreciation. "Clear thinking comes from a clear conscience. That's what I aim for." The director smiled. "It shows." After the round table ended, Serena walked out into the cool night air. The sky was dark, and the streetlights created soft halos around the sidewalks. She made her way toward the parking lot, her footsteps quiet but steady. She reached her car and paused when she sensed someone standing a short distance away. She turned. Braxton stood near the edge of the lot, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders stiff. He looked unsure of himself, a man who didn't know how to approach someone he had wronged. Serena didn't move closer, but she didn't step back either. She allowed the moment to remain grounded. He spoke first. "I didn't know where else to go." Serena remained composed. "You shouldn't be here, but you're here anyway." He exhaled shakily. "I needed to see you, not to talk about the business or the contracts or the companies that left. None of that matters right now." She waited for him to continue. He stepped closer, not invading her space, but speaking with careful honesty. "I remember everything. I remember the way I dismissed her concerns. I remember the way she looked at me when she realized I took something from her. I told myself she would be fine. I told myself she wouldn't understand how the industry worked. I made those excuses to protect my ego." Serena's voice remained steady. "You built an empire on someone else's foundation. That truth was always going to come back." He nodded, his throat tight. "I know I deserve that truth. I deserve to feel it." He paused, searching her face. "I never meant to hurt her. I never wanted to be that kind of man." Serena didn't interrupt. She let him speak. He continued quietly. "When she left, I assumed she moved on. I didn't know she was pregnant. I didn't know she needed help. I didn't know she needed someone to stand beside her." His breath shook. "I didn't know anything because I didn't care to look." Serena felt the heaviness in his words, but she didn't soften. Her voice carried the weight of dignity. "You can't rewrite the past. You can't bring her back. You can't erase what she went through." His eyes lowered. "I know." But, Serena added gently, "You can understand the cost of your choices. You can change the man you are, not for me, not for the industry, for yourself." He lifted his eyes slowly. "How does someone like me even begin?" Serena stepped slightly closer, her expression calm but firm. "By sitting with the truth instead of running from it. By accepting that her brilliance carried your success. By acknowledging her pain without making excuses. And by learning to move through the world without taking advantage of the people who trust you." He nodded, his voice almost a whisper. "I want to do better." Serena held his gaze. "Wanting is a start, becoming is a process." The wind moved softly across the lot as the moment settled between them. He didn't cry, but the emotion in his eyes made it clear he felt the truth deeply. Serena didn't walk away quickly. She gave him enough time to absorb the conversation. Eventually, he spoke again. "You allow me to talk to you again, not about work, about everything I need to understand." Serena answered honestly. "Not now, you need to face yourself first. When you're ready, I'll know." He nodded gratefully, accepting the boundary. "Thank you for speaking to me." Serena didn't reply with a comforting phrase. She simply offered a small, steady nod and opened her car door. Braxton watched her drive away, the taillights fading into the night, leaving him alone with the truth he had avoided for years. For the next few days, he did exactly what she asked. He sat with the truth. He stayed home from the office and revisited every old document connected to his rise. He opened the folder containing Mariah's early drafts. He saw her handwriting, her sketches, her formulas. He remembered the look on her face when she shared them. He realized how easily he had taken her trust and translated it into his own ambition. He felt the weight of it deeply, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, honest way that forced him to reconsider the man he believed himself to be. It didn't break him. It humbled him. And humility was a better lesson than any form of punishment. Meanwhile, Serena continued working with the same focus she carried from the beginning. She led her team with grace, finalized major partnerships, and maintained her calm presence in every door she walked through. More companies chose her firm. More voices in the industry praised her clarity. More leaders admired her dignity. She didn't rush the journey. She didn't celebrate loudly. She didn't seek revenge. She simply honored her sister by becoming the woman she always knew she could be. And somewhere across the city, a man who once stole everything finally learned to face the truth he never wanted to see. Because Serena showed him the lesson he feared, not with anger, but with dignity he had never earned. That was the beginning of his transformation, and the continuation of hers. 2 weeks passed quietly, but nothing about the industry felt the same. Clients who once depended on Hale Analytics now sent polite notices requesting restructuring. Partners who used to praise Braxton's confidence now asked for independent evaluations before renewing contracts. Even the board moved differently, no longer leaning on his instinct, but instead insisting on measurable proof. None of this happened loudly. It unfolded in soft movements, in subtle decisions, in small ripples that eventually became undeniable waves. Through all of it, Serena continued rising with a steady grace that surprised even the people around her. Her firm expanded, not through aggressive marketing but through genuine trust. Every company she worked with praised her transparency. Every meeting showcased her clarity. Every interaction reminded people of the power behind a calm, grounded leader who valued integrity over performance. She didn't brag about her growth. She didn't post victory announcements. She didn't gloat over the companies who switched from Braxton to her. She kept moving with the same quiet purpose she carried from the beginning. Her team admired her deeply. Erin often found herself watching Serena during meetings, noticing how she listened with full presence and how she guided complicated discussions without ever raising her voice. Cassandra learned to match Serena's pacing, absorbing the emotional maturity behind her decisions. The entire office reflected the atmosphere Serena built: calm, strong, confident, and compassionate. None of them knew that another shift was quietly forming beyond the walls of their office. Because while Serena grew in purpose, Braxton grew in humility. The man who once walked through the world believing he was untouchable began to see himself the way others had seen him for years. Powerful, yes, but incomplete, insecure, and often careless with other people's hearts. He didn't drown in guilt. He didn't spiral into self-pity. Instead, he sat with the truth Serena placed before him and allowed it to reshape him piece by piece. He read every page of Mariah's original drafts, honoring her brilliance in a way he never did before. He watched old interviews of himself and saw arrogance where he once thought he saw charm. He replayed business calls and recognized the subtle ways he silenced people who tried to speak. And every time he remembered Mariah's voice, he felt something tight inside him, a quiet ache that reminded him what was lost. He didn't seek redemption from the world. He wasn't naive enough to believe that one epiphany could erase 7 years of avoidance. But he wanted to understand, deeply and honestly, what kind of man he had been, and he wanted to grow into someone who deserved forgiveness, even if he never received it. Serena didn't interfere, she didn't check on him, she didn't contact him. She gave him exactly what she promised: space to face himself. She trusted that real change didn't need her supervision. Real change began in silence. During those 2 weeks, Serena focused on a major partnership with Dynex that could shift the entire industry's future. She spent long hours reviewing structural models and late nights adjusting projections. Cassandra scheduled back-to-back meetings, and Aaron organized the documents with careful detail. Their office buzzed with momentum but never lost its sense of balance. One Friday afternoon, Serena dismissed her team early after a long strategic week. The sun was still bright when she stepped outside the building, carrying her laptop case and a small notebook. She planned to visit her sister's old neighborhood again, not to relive the past, but to feel grounded before entering the next phase of her expansion. She drove quietly through familiar streets, passing the park where she and Mariah used to sit during late evenings, talking about dreams neither of them imagined would unravel the way they did. When she reached the courtyard, she parked and walked to the old oak tree. The branches swayed in the soft breeze, and the worn wooden bench still stood beneath it, slightly cracked but holding its shape. Serena sat down calmly, her hands resting on her lap. She closed her eyes and let the silence settle around her. She didn't cry. She didn't feel overwhelmed. She felt connected, as if she were sitting beside her sister in spirit. She whispered quietly, "Your work didn't vanish. Your voice didn't disappear. Everything you built lives here through me." A small smile touched her lips. The moment felt peaceful, almost healing. After several minutes, she stood and walked back to her car. She didn't notice the figure standing at a distance across the courtyard until he took a hesitant step forward. She turned and saw him. Braxton. He stood beside the brick wall of the adjacent building, hands loosely at his sides, expression heavy but controlled. His suit jacket was unbuttoned, his posture slightly slouched, and his eyes carried the softness of a man who learned to stop pretending. Serena wasn't startled, she simply waited. He walked forward slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. The courtyard felt still, as if even the trees paused to watch. "I didn't follow you," he said quietly. "I've been coming here for a few days. I wasn't sure if I would see you." Serena kept her gaze steady. "This place holds memories." He nodded. "It holds your sister's energy. I can feel it." Serena didn't speak. She let him find his words. He took a slow breath. "I've been thinking about everything you said. I didn't realize how much of my life I spent convincing myself I was right. I didn't realize how often I made decisions that benefited me without considering the cost to others." Serena remained grounded. "Awareness is the beginning," he continued. "I understand things now that I should have understood 7 years ago. I see how much she trusted me. I see how deeply I failed her." His voice didn't shake this time. It carried the weight of acceptance. "I can't undo any of it," he said. "I can't bring her back. I can't fix her pain, but I want to honor her. I want to do something meaningful with what she created." Serena tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" He pulled a folded document from his inner pocket. He didn't hand it to her yet. He held it carefully, as if the paper itself carried something sacred. "For the past 2 weeks," he said, "I've been reviewing the entire history of our algorithm. The drafts, the patents, the structure, the design. I've compared them line by line with her original work." He paused. "And I see clearly now that the foundation was hers. The brilliance was hers. The heart of it was hers." Serena's chest tightened, but she stayed steady. He finally extended the document toward her. She took it and unfolded it carefully. It was a legal transfer agreement. She read the first line slowly. "All intellectual property rights of the original algorithm are hereby recognized as the sole creation of Mariah Cole." Serena looked up. He kept his gaze level. "It belongs to her. It always did. And since she's gone, it belongs to you, as her living heir and as the person who preserved her vision." Serena didn't move for a moment. The truth of that gesture was too large to respond to quickly. She let the weight of it settle. Braxton continued softly. "This isn't an apology wrapped in a gift. This isn't me trying to fix what can't be fixed. This is me telling the truth, finally, with no expectations." His voice softened even more. "It's time the world knows what Mariah created." Serena lowered her eyes to the document again. The transfer wasn't symbolic. It was legally binding. He was giving away a piece of his empire, one of the most valuable components of Hale Analytics, and returning it to its rightful creator. She folded the document neatly and met his eyes. "Why now?" he answered without hesitation. "Because carrying something that never belonged to me is no longer something I can live with." A long silence settled between them, but it wasn't tense. It was full, deep, human. Serena finally spoke. "Truth changes people," he nodded. "It's changing me." "And what do you want from me in return?" she asked, voice steady. His answer came immediately. "Nothing." Serena studied him with the clarity she always carried. She saw that he meant it, not as a performance, not as manipulation, not as a plea for forgiveness, as truth, pure truth. "I can't undo the past," he said quietly, "but I can stop being the man who created it." Her eyes softened subtly. She stepped 1 foot closer, not as acceptance, not as forgiveness, but as acknowledgement. "You're learning," she said gently. "That's enough for today." He nodded slowly, grateful for even that small step. As Serena walked back to her car, she looked once more at the old oak tree, the branches moving softly in the wind as if blessing the moment. She placed the document on the passenger seat and took a deep breath before starting the engine. Across the courtyard, Braxton watched her leave with a humility that reshaped him entirely. He didn't chase her. He didn't ask for another conversation. He didn't try to insert himself into her life. He simply understood that listening was the foundation of change. The Monday after Braxton returned the algorithm rights, Serena stepped into her office with a different kind of calm. It wasn't victory. It wasn't relief. It was a recognition that a long circle had finally begun to close. She placed her bag on her desk and ran her fingers gently along the edge of the folded document before setting it aside. Her team filtered in gradually, not yet aware of the shift that occurred over the weekend. Erin entered first with a stack of reports pressed against her chest, followed by Cassandra carrying 2 binders and a tablet. They greeted Serena and began preparing for the day's meetings, completely unaware that a truth 7 years old finally found its way into daylight. Serena sat at the head of the conference table as Cassandra recapped the schedule for the week. There were 3 partnership calls with Dynex, a restructuring review for Newbridge, a transition forecast for Trevon, and a new proposal from a firm hoping to join Serena's growing network. The company was expanding faster than any of them predicted, and yet the atmosphere inside the office remained steady because Serena never let momentum replace mindfulness. She listened to Cassandra describe the numbers and nodded quietly, taking mental notes with the same clarity she carried from the beginning. Halfway through the briefing, Serena reached into her folder and placed the transfer document on the table. Cassandra's voice slowed as she noticed it, and Erin leaned forward with curious confusion. Serena waited until they both settled before speaking in her calm, centered tone. She explained what happened in the courtyard, how Braxton approached her, what he said, and how he returned the intellectual property rights to Mariah's original algorithm. She didn't dramatize the moment. She didn't exaggerate his remorse. She simply stated the facts with clarity. For a moment, neither Cassandra nor Erin spoke. Erin's eyes softened with emotion as she placed her hand over her heart. Cassandra leaned back slightly, absorbing the magnitude of what Serena just shared. She remembered the nights Serena sat beside her sister during those final months, carrying a strength far heavier than her age. She remembered how Serena joined her firm with determination sharper than most seasoned executives. She remembered the way Serena worked in silence, always honoring a truth no one else could see. Cassandra cleared her throat softly. "This is justice," she said. "The quiet kind, the kind your sister deserved." Serena nodded with gratitude. "It isn't about taking something from him, it's about restoring something to her." Erin blinked back emotion. She would be proud. Serena gave a small smile. "That's all I ever wanted." They returned to work, but the energy in the room was different. It wasn't loud. It wasn't celebratory. It was grounded, full of quiet purpose and emotional clarity. The kind of energy that filled the air when someone honored the past without letting it hold them hostage. Across the city, Braxton walked into his office with a posture his staff had never seen before. He greeted the receptionist, thanked the security guard who held the elevator, and exchanged a polite nod with an intern who looked shocked that the CEO acknowledged him. He walked through the hallway with slower steps, not out of hesitation, but out of intention. It felt different to show up with humility instead of dominance. Inside his office, he didn't sit at the desk immediately. He walked to the window and looked out at the skyline, remembering how he used to view the city as proof of his success. Today, he saw the buildings differently. They looked tall, yes, but not because of him. They looked tall because they existed long before he arrived and would continue long after he left. His empire wasn't the city. His empire wasn't the fame. His empire had been built on someone else's foundation, and now that he returned Mariah's work to its rightful place, He finally understood what it meant to build something honestly. His assistant knocked on the door gently. "Sir, the board is waiting for you." He took a deep breath. Today's meeting wasn't about defending himself or proving anything. It was about telling the truth. He walked down the hallway and entered the boardroom where 11 faces stared at him with a mix of confusion, impatience, and concern. He didn't take his seat immediately. He stood at the head of the table and placed a folder in front of him. "Before we continue with numbers, I need to address something more important," he said. His tone was calm, steady, and clear, completely unlike the man they had known for years. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Braxton explained the origins of the algorithm, how Mariah contributed to the foundation of the company, and how he had overlooked her brilliance. He didn't make excuses. He didn't soften the truth. He didn't attempt to protect his image. He spoke with a sincerity that caught the entire board off guard. When he finished, he placed the transfer agreement on the table. One board member frowned. "You gave away part of our intellectual property." "I returned what never belonged to us," Braxton said simply. Another member leaned forward. "This could affect the company's valuation." Braxton nodded. "Integrity sometimes affects numbers, but it increases sustainability." They stared at him, surprised by the shift. "This isn't about me losing control," Braxton continued. "It's about us rebuilding with honesty. If you want leadership that hides the truth, replace me. If you want leadership that grows from it, I'm here." The room fell into a stunned silence. They had never seen him this grounded, this real, this emotionally present. The oldest board member cleared his throat gently. "This is the first time I've heard you speak like a leader," he said. Braxton didn't smile. "It's the first time I've felt like one." Across town, Serena finished her midday meeting and stepped into her office alone. She sat by the window with her sister's notebook in her hands and opened it to the earliest pages. Mariah's handwriting filled each line with clarity and enthusiasm. She had always written in long sentences, never breaking her thoughts, always explaining her ideas with full detail and emotion. Serena ran her fingers over the ink gently, feeling her sister's presence in every curve of the letters. She whispered softly, "It's home now." She closed the notebook and stood, ready to move forward with the next phase of her restructuring plan. That afternoon, Serena received an email from Dynex confirming that their multi-year partnership contract was officially approved. The message praised her dedication, thanked her for her clarity during the presentations, and expressed excitement about the future of their collaboration. Serena smiled faintly as she shared the news with Cassandra and Aaron. Her team celebrated with quiet joy, knowing how much work went into achieving the partnership without compromising the firm's integrity. Later that evening, Serena closed her office and walked toward her car, the sky shifting into soft purple as the sun disappeared behind the skyline. She felt a sense of alignment in her spirit, a recognition that life had finally returned the balance her sister was denied. She reached her car and saw a figure standing a respectful distance away. Braxton. She didn't appear surprised. She didn't appear bothered. She simply waited as he walked toward her with measured steps. He stopped several feet away, giving her space and waiting for her acknowledgement before speaking. "Thank you for what you said in the courtyard," he said in a quiet, grounded voice. "It changed the way I look at everything." Serena studied him calmly. "I didn't say anything for you, I said it for the truth." He nodded. "It was enough." He glanced toward the building, then back at her. "Your firm is growing fast. You're becoming something the industry hasn't seen before." Serena remained steady. "Growth means responsibility. I take that seriously." He took a breath. "I know I can't ask for forgiveness. I know I can't fix the past, but I want you to know I'm not the same man who hurt her." Serena didn't respond immediately. She let the silence shape the moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the depth of a woman who understood pain and healing equally. "Forgiveness isn't owed, it isn't requested, it's lived into. If you want to honor her, build a life that doesn't repeat what broke her." He nodded slowly, accepting the truth without resistance. "I will." Serena softened her expression slightly. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but acknowledgement of a man trying to grow beyond who he was. "That's all anyone can ask of you," she said. He stepped back respectfully, signaling the end of the conversation. "Thank you for allowing me to listen." She gave a small nod, then opened her car door and sat inside. As she drove away, she didn't look in the mirror. She didn't need to. She knew the moment had served its purpose. She returned home and placed the transfer agreement on her kitchen table beside Mariah's notebook. She lit a small candle, not as a ritual, but as a symbolic gesture of remembrance. The flame flickered softly in the quiet room, reflecting the strength of a woman whose brilliance lived on through her sister. Serena sat down, rested her hand gently on the document, and closed her eyes. She didn't feel triumph. She didn't feel revenge. She felt peace. A quiet peace that settled deep inside her chest, steady and warm. Her sister's legacy had returned home. Her own journey had entered a new chapter. And somewhere across the city, a man who once stole everything was finally learning how to live with truth as his compass instead of ego. The world didn't need to know their story. The world didn't need a spectacle. The world only needed the outcome. A legacy restored. A family honored. A woman standing in her full strength. Serena whispered into the quiet room, "Rest easy now, your voice was never lost." And with that, the long journey reached its quiet, dignified completion. For the first time in 7 years, he was finally learning how to listen. In the end, this story wasn't about destroying a man or proving anyone wrong. It was about honoring the truth that Mariah carried in her heart and returning her work to the place it always belonged. Serena didn't rise through anger or revenge. She rose with clarity, dignity, and emotional strength that never needed to shout to be heard. She showed that healing begins the moment you stop running from the truth and start walking toward it with open eyes. She reminded us that justice doesn't always arrive with noise or public applause. Sometimes it arrives quietly, when a broken circle finally closes and a lost legacy returns home. And in that quiet, a whole family finds peace again.
Thank you, dear soul, for journeying with Serena tonight. Her courage, grace, and unwavering spirit have truly touched my heart, and I hope they've resonated with yours too. If this story of quiet justice and profound healing left an impact, please show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to Black Women's Soul Stories. Your engagement helps us nurture this sacred space, a home dedicated to narratives that celebrate dignity, foster healing, and amplify emotional strength. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story like Serena's. And as you reflect on this incredible journey, I would be honored to know, which city are you watching from tonight? Share your city in the comments below. I deeply cherish connecting with every beautiful heart in our growing community.